We begin in Alice Springs this morning with the outback town emerging from the first night of a fresh three-night curfew. The latest curfew, unlike the last, applies to everyone, not just those under 18.
It follows a string of violent incidents in the outback town, including the alleged assault of 4 off-duty police officers in what the NT Police Minister has described as a horror 72 hours. We'll hear from Senator Jacinta Nabarjimba-Price in a moment, but first let's go straight to our reporter Charmaine Allison in Alice Springs. Charmaine, good morning. So how did the first night of this curfew go?
Yes, Emma, people are waking up from the first night of a 72-hour curfew here in Alice Springs. From 10 p.m. until 6 a.m, people of all ages were barred from entering the heart of the CBD behind me here, except for a small number of reasons, including visiting family, caregiving and going to work. Now, police say they had about 100 interactions with people in the high-risk zone during the hours of the curfew last night. They say they saw generally good compliance and people were quite positive about the education around the rules of the curfew, and no arrests were made in relation to breaches of this emergency measure. While it's still early days, police say it's a good trend so far and they're hopeful it will continue in the nights ahead. Something which may have contributed to this quiet night was the closure of 2 of Alice Springs' most popular pubs, Bojangles and the Rock Bar. Police announced late yesterday that they were suspending the liquor licenses of these 2 venues for a period of 48 hours. Now, this comes after a brawl in the early hours of Sunday morning at the front of these 2 pubs involving about 80 people. Later on, 4 off-duty police officers were allegedly assaulted while walking back to their hotel by a group of about 20 people who had been moved on from this brawl by police. Now, police say in the interest of reducing alcohol-related harm, they are enforcing these temporary alcohol license suspensions, but the owners of Bojangles have since spoken out and they say they believe they're being unfairly punished and are calling for any evidence that they were linked to the violence of Sunday morning.
Charmaine, in terms of this curfew, what's the community response been like? What's the reaction?
Well, we're hearing mixed responses so far, similar to the youth curfew that rolled out back in March in Alice Springs. Some people are very positive that it could be a circuit breaker for the embattled town, but others say they fear the government is just returning to another band-aid measure. They say they are yet to see real evidence of long-term measures to address the underlying issues behind crime in the region, in particular the systemic poverty and neglect of remote Aboriginal communities. There's also concerns that alcohol is a key factor and calls for tighter restrictions on alcohol sales that go beyond the bottle shop rules currently in place. We also spoke to Jared Sharp from the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency. He's concerned the curfew will unfairly target the most disadvantaged people in Alice. Here's what he had to say.
We are talking about some of the most marginalised and disadvantaged people in Australia who will be sleeping rough. We're talking about young people who don't have a lot of young people who don't have safe places to go at night. We're talking about people with mental health issues, people who won't be following the news of the day, who will be just going about their daily lives and suddenly will be having interactions with police.
So certainly widespread calls for the government to look beyond this curfew and address the long-term issues plaguing Alice Springs.
Yeah, we'll be speaking more about this shortly. Charmaine, thank you.
Well, to breaking news, and a 22-year-old Sydney man will face court today over the fatal stabbing of a woman in Western Sydney yesterday. Let's get the details now from our reporter Jessica Rendell. Jess, this would appear to be another alleged domestic violence incident.
That's right. That's what police are treating this as. And as you just said there, Lisa, police are about to charge this man. We're unsure what those charges are yet, but we do know that he will be facing court a little later today. And that's due to this incident that happened in the unit behind me here. Yesterday afternoon, emergency services were called to this unit block after reports that a woman had been stabbed twice in the chest. She was treated by paramedics here at the scene. There were rescue rescue choppers here to evacuate her to a nearby hospital, but unfortunately she died here at the scene. Now, as for the 22-year-old man that police believe are responsible for this, they say he is her partner and he fled the scene on foot and was hiding out in nearby neighbourhoods. That sparked an hours-long manhunt. Police were combing through the suburbs around here for hours and eventually found him at 7 o'clock last night in Penrith. He was arrested and taken to a nearby police station where he assisted police with their inquiries. And this morning we're hearing that he is about to be charged and will face court a little later today, Lisa. Now, as for the history between this couple, police say they were not known to them and that there was no history of violence between the couple. However, they are treating this as an incident of domestic violence.
Jess, thank you.
Taking a look at other news, a neighbour who smashed his way into a burning home in Western Sydney to save 4 children says he's heartbroken over the loss of 3 other children in such devastating circumstances. Jared Hawkins entered the burning Layla Park home in the early hours of Sunday morning and says he crawled his way through the smoke-filled home following the sound of children coughing in order to reach them.
More like heartbreaking that someone would do that to their kid. At the time, I don't know, I just felt like I just had to do the right thing. I just grabbed the kid and just took off.
2 drivers are dead following a head-on collision in regional Victoria overnight. Police believe one of the vehicles veered onto the wrong side of the road prior to the crash at Moriac, west of Geelong. 2 men, aged 23 and 59, died at the scene.
Hurricane Beryl has been downgraded to a tropical storm after making landfall in the US. More than 2 million homes and businesses in Texas were left without power. Damaging winds and flash flooding are set to continue as the tropical storm pushes inland.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will retaliate after Russian missile attacks killed at least 36 people across Ukraine and damaged a children's hospital. Russia has denied attacking the hospital and says its strikes hit military targets. As world leaders prepare to head to a NATO summit, Mr Zelensky is calling for a firm response from Ukraine's allies.
Electric vehicles could help stabilise the power grid during outages, according to findings by the Australian National University. A fleet of 16 EVs charging in Canberra prevented a major storm blackout from spreading in Melbourne earlier this year by discharging back into the national power grid. Lead researcher Björn Stromberg says the study shows EVs could play an important role in power management.
And King Charles has had a warm greeting from the West Indies cricket team ahead of the team's opening test match of the summer against England at Lord's. Look at this. Windies bowler Jeremiah Lewis taught the Monarch a 5-step handshake, which the King joked was very complicated. There you go.